you to our RHS String Quartet. Hello everyone, and welcome to the 2024 Veterans Day Assembly. Thank you for joining us today. Make sure your phones are silenced and stowed away in your bags along with smartwatches and earbuds. Now, please welcome Priyna Chohan to deliver the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the ancestral homeland of the First Peoples of Seattle, the Duwamish, Suquamish, and Muckleshoot, among the many other Salish peoples. We would like to express our respect and gratitude to our Indigenous neighbors for their enduring care and protection of our shared waterways and land. We recognize that this acknowledgement alone is not enough, and we encourage you to donate directly to causes that support Indigenous peoples, such as realrecduwamish.org. It is imperative that we understand that these are real living human beings participating in society today, and they are not distant in time nor space, so actionable steps to support Native Americans should be a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyna. Help me in welcoming Roosevelt's very own vocal jazz ensemble to perform the National Anthem. Please, if you are able, stand, remove your hats, place your hand over your heart, and face the flag.
Thank you, Vocal Jazz. Veterans Day was originally called Armistice Day, which is an agreement made by opposing sides in a war to stop fighting for a certain time. It marked the one-year anniversary of the temporary cessation of hostilities between the Allied nations and Germany during World War I. That armistice went into effect at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918. In 1926, Congress passed a resolution to make Veterans Day an annual occurrence. It didn't become a federal holiday until 1938. In 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower changed the name from Armistice Day to Veterans Day so it can honor all veterans rather than commemorate the end of a single war. Now, please join me in taking a moment of silence to recognize all veterans.
Thank you all. Now, we're going to watch a video by former President Barack Obama.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much, please. Thank you. Thank you. Please. Thank you. Secretary McDonald, Mr. Howland, distinguished guests, and most of all, our extraordinary veterans and your families. Last time I stood on these hallowed grounds on Memorial Day, our country came together to honor those who have fought and died for our flag. A few days before, our nation observed Armed Forces Day, honoring all who are serving under that flag at this moment. Today, on Veterans Day, we honor those who honored our country with its highest form of service. You who once wore the uniform of our Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, or Coast Guard. We owe you our thanks. We owe you our respect. And we owe you our freedom. We come together to express our profound gratitude for the sacrifices and contributions you and your family made on the battlefield, at home, and at outposts around the world. But America's gratitude to our veterans is something always grounded in something greater than what you did on duty. It's also an appreciation of the example that you continue to set after your service has ended. Your example as citizens. Veterans Day often follows a hard-fought political campaign, an exercise in free speech and self-government that you fought for. It often lays bare disagreements across our nation. But the American instinct has never been to find isolation in opposite corners. It is to find strength in our common creed, to forge unity from our great diversity, to sustain that strength and unity even when it is hard. When the election is over, as we search for ways to come together, to reconnect with one another and with the principles that are more enduring than transitory politics. Some of our best examples are the men and women we salute on Veterans Day. It's the example of young Americans, our 9/11 generation, who as first responders ran into smoldering towers, then ran to a recruiting center and signed up to serve. It's the example of a military that meets every mission, one united team, all looking out for one another, all getting each other's backs. It's the example of the single most diverse institution in our country. Soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen who represent every corner of our country, every shade of humanity, immigrant and native born, Christian, Muslim, Jew, and non-believer alike, all forged into common service. It's the example of our veterans, patriots, who when they take off their fatigues, put back on the camouflage of everyday life in America and become our business partners and bosses, our teachers and our coaches, our first responders, city council members, community leaders, role models, all still serving this country we love with the same sense of duty and with valor. A few years ago, a middle school student from Missouri entered an essay contest about why veterans are special. And this is what he wrote. When I think of a veteran, I think of men or women who will be the first to help an elderly lady across the street. I also think of someone who will defend everyone, regardless of their race, age, gender, hair color, or other discriminations. After 8 years in office, I particularly appreciate that he included hair color. But that middle schooler is right. Our veterans are still the first to help, still the first to serve. They are like the retired military policewoman from Buffalo who founded an AMVETS post in her community and is now building a safe place for homeless female veterans with children. They are men like the two veterans from Tennessee, one in his 50s, one in his 60s, who wrote me to say they would happily suit up and ship out if we needed them. We might be just a little old, they wrote, but we will be proud to go and do what we were taught to do. Whenever the world makes you cynical, whenever you seek true humility and selflessness, look to a veteran. Look to someone like First Lieutenant Irving Lerner. Irving was born in Chicago to Russian Jewish immigrants during World War I. He served as a bombardier in the Army Air Corps, flying dozens of missions toward the end of World War II. When he returned home, Irving did what a lot of veterans do. He put his medals away, he kept humble about his service, started living a quiet life. One fall day, walking down Sheffield Avenue on Chicago's north side, a stranger stopped him. He said, "Thank you for your service," and he handed him a ticket to see the Cubs play in the World Series. Now, it's a good thing Irving took that ticket, because it would be a while until his next chance. Irving worked hard managing the warehouses for his brother-in-law's tire company. He got married to a sergeant in the Women's Air Corps, no less. He raised 4 children, the oldest of whom, Susan, is celebrating her 71st birthday today. And on a June morning, many years ago, another one of Irving's daughters, Carol, called to check in. Her mother answered, but was in a rush. "We can't talk," she said. "Your father's being honored, and we're late." Carol asked, "Honored for what?" And the answer came, for his heroism in the skies above Normandy exactly 50 years earlier. You see, Irving's children never knew that their father flew over those French beachheads on D-Day. He never mentioned it. Now when they call to check in, his children always say, "Thank you for saving the world." And Irving, sharp as ever at 100 years young, always replies, "Well, I had a little help." Whenever the world makes you cynical, whenever you doubt that courage and goodness and selflessness is possible, then stop and look to a veteran. They don't always go around telling stories of their heroism, so it's up to us to ask and to listen, to tell those stories for them, and to live in our own lives the values for which they were prepared to give theirs. It's up to us to make sure they always get the care that they need. As Bob mentioned, when I announced my candidacy for this office almost a decade ago, I recommitted this generation to that work. And we've increased funding for veterans by more than 85%. We've cut veterans' homelessness almost in half, Today, more veterans have access to health care and fewer are unemployed. We help disabled veterans afford prosthetics. We're delivering more mental health care services to more veterans than ever before because we know that not all wounds of war are visible. Together, we began this work. Together, we must continue to keep that sacred trust with our veterans and honor their good work with our own, knowing that our mission is never done. It's still a tragedy that 20 veterans a day take their own lives. We have to get them the help they need. We have to keep solving problems like long wait times at the VA. We have to keep cutting the disability claims backlog. We have to resist any effort to outsource and privatize the health care we owe America's veterans. On Veterans Day, we acknowledge humbly that we can never serve our veterans in quite the same way that they served us, but we can try. We can practice kindness, we can pay it forward, we can volunteer, we can serve, we can respect one another, we can always get each other's backs. That is what Veterans Day asks all of us to think about. The person you pass as you walk down the street might not be wearing our nation's uniform today, but consider for a moment that a year or a decade or a generation ago, he or she might have been one of our fellow citizens who was willing to lay down their life for strangers like us. And we can show how much we love our country by loving our neighbors as ourselves. May God bless all who served and still do. And may God bless the United States of America.
We hope that video resonated with you and encourages you to reflect on the many things that American veterans have given up fighting for our country. Now, please help me in welcoming Ms. Gero and the Roosevelt Orchestra.
Thank you. Thank you, Chase and Connor and Jack. I wanted to say a few words, especially before we tell you a little bit about the music. But first, I'd like to ask for the veterans that are in our audience today, can you please stand up so that we could acknowledge you? If there are veterans in the audience, please stand up, including our speaker. And we have more. Give it up for this gal. Please come up. So in this final video that you'll see later on, Ronald Reagan is heard speaking. And he talks about how appropriate it is that Veterans Day falls during the autumn months. And this piece that is titled October by a composer named Eric Whitaker is meant to be a reflective piece. And that's what we're all hoping that you are able to do during all this. So I have another question. If you are 18 years old, could you please stand up? All the 18-year-olds, let me see you guys. Are we not have seniors in this room? I don't know. Oh, seniors are completely. There's a few up there. Yeah. So you can sit down now. Thanks, guys. We've been working on gratitude in the music classes over the past week because I felt like that was a good way for us to sort of come together. And when I asked different students what they were grateful for, one person said, I'll paraphrase, that I'm grateful that I live in a country where I don't have to serve when I turn 18 if I don't want to. And I thought that was very interesting because it's true. Another thing that Ronald Reagan will say later is he'll say, when so many veterans went off during wartime, they were boys long ago, right? Before women were even in armed services. And I can't even imagine when I look at so many of you having to make that decision, even for my own son. It's a lot to think about. And so in terms of gratitude, I'd also like to tell you a little something else. I was in New York City during 9/11. I was at graduate school at NYU. I remember when everything happened, and I remembered when all the service members came through Manhattan, literally Army tanks going down 3rd Avenue. If you've ever been to New York City, you can imagine what that must have been like. And we were all very grateful to have them there. And everything that happened after that was definitely because of our veterans, for the people that decided, knowing how difficult things were going to be, that they would put on uniforms and go and do whatever they could or needed to do in order for all of us to keep the freedoms that we have and the opportunities, of which I do believe we do take for granted, all of us. And it's not just you guys as teenagers, but it is all of us that take for granted the things that we have and need some reminding. Another thing that came up in classes this week is why come together as a school community at all for an assembly. There is power in numbers, my friends. And it doesn't matter if it's a small group at a church or a synagogue or a mosque or any other place of worship, or if we are together in a gathering space as this. There are times in our lives where we absolutely must and should come together as a community. And I'm so grateful that Veterans Day is this week, during a week that's been very difficult for many different reasons. And one of Obama's very famous lines that I absolutely love was way before he even ran for office. And he took stage at a Democratic National Convention and he said, "We are not red states and we are not blue states. We are the United States of America." And I think that's something we need to always remember. Today is not about being liberal, and it is not about being conservative. It is not about being Republican, independent, or a Democrat. Because there are a few things these days we seem to be able to agree on. But what we can agree on is that we have amazing people that have dedicated their lives in the armed services to make sure that we all keep those freedoms. You cannot open up the news without seeing all the hurt that is going on in the world. War everywhere. Children way younger than you guys that are in severe pain. We don't have that here. I have never experienced that here. That is a privilege and a gift. So there's a lot to think about, I think, right now as we play this music. I think I've given you a few points. Right now I would like to share with you one of my most favorite pieces of music. This is by a living composer who is just now in his 50s, October by Eric Whitacre.
Thank you, orchestra. Now, please help me in welcoming our guest speaker, Mr. David Castillo.
Well, I'll tell you what, that was amazingly beautiful orchestra. That was very moving. I'm up here today having to follow that and a speech by one of the greatest orators of our time, President Obama. So hopefully I can keep up and not let you guys down. I want to say this real quick before I get started. First, I know that there's a lot of playoff activity, cross-country state finals going on this weekend. I just want to say congratulations and best of luck to everyone who's going to be participating this weekend in those sports activities. I want to give a special shout out to the football team because I want to let you guys know I was actually up for the head football coaching job at Capitol High School about 5 to 6 years ago. Did not get it, obviously, because I'm standing here today. So got a little skin in the game, a little animosity. Just hope you guys go out there and vote race tonight. Take care of business. Thank you. Having a little trouble with this. There we go. Doesn't want to stay. You know what? Let me just hold that. All right. So thank you so much for having me. It truly is an honor to be here today. Thank you to the faculty, staff, and students of Roosevelt High School for allowing me to spend a little time with you. My name is David Castillo. I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm a football coach and a financial advisor, and I'm also a proud veteran of the United States Navy. I also have the unique honor of serving as an executive for a handful of years at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And I'm not here today because I did anything spectacular while I was on active duty or have some unique story to tell. I'm simply here because I chose to serve, and I want to spend a little time today talking with you guys about what that means. So how many of you here this morning, and I can't see because of the lights, how many of you here this morning have a relative or friend or family member that served or is currently serving in the armed forces? Show of hands. Yep, that is unsurprising. And I think if I asked this question at almost any school in America, no matter how big or small, we'd have a lot of hands raised. So when you hear the word service, or you think about someone who served, what comes to mind? And I'm asking this question. What comes to mind when you hear the word service, or think about someone who served? Dedication, love it. Sacrifice, love that, yep. Bravery.
Killing.
What's that?
Killing.
Okay. What was that? I love it. All right. So there's a lot there. When I hear the word service, and I think about people who serve, I think of a gentleman by the name of Major General Pat Brady. Major General Brady is a Medal of Honor recipient, and he's someone who I've had the great privilege of spending some time with. So show of hands real quick. Who here knows what the Medal of Honor is? Okay, great. That's most of you. So for those of you who don't know what it is, it's the highest award for valor in action against the enemy force that our country bestows upon a U.S. member of the armed forces. The deed performed must have been one of personal bravery or self-sacrifice so conspicuous as to clearly distinguish the individual above their comrades, and it must have involved risk of life. It was established in July of 1862 and was first given out during the Civil War. Now, a little bit about General Brady. He attended O'Day High School, don't hold that against him, and attended Seattle University on an ROTC scholarship. One of the things that is remarkable about General Brady, and most of the Medal of Honor recipients over the years, is that they were just ordinary people who, through their service to country and fellow service members, did extraordinary things. On February 1966, while serving as a captain and helicopter pilot with the 1st Cavalry Division, Brady was involved in a daring and selfless rescue mission during a fierce battle in Vietnam. In the face of intense enemy fire, he made multiple perilous flights to evacuate wounded soldiers, demonstrating remarkable courage and determination. Despite being fully aware of the danger, Brady repeatedly flew into hostile territory to pick up the injured, often under heavy ground fire from enemy forces, and he brought them to safety. His actions, which clearly saved numerous lives, exemplified exceptional bravery and an unwavering commitment to his comrades. His courage under fire, combined with his willingness to place the lives of others before his own, ultimately earned him the Medal of Honor, recognizing him as a symbol of valor and leadership in the face of overwhelming odds. So that's what he did. Sacrifice and selflessness. Somebody said sacrifice when I asked about what service means. So there are two qualities that are certainly represented by General Brady, and I would argue qualities that tend to embody our veterans population as a whole. So I mentioned General Brady because his actions were brave, unselfish, and sacrificial. He took extraordinary measures, but when you think about it in everyday terms, the qualities he imbued are ordinary. Now, don't get me wrong. General Brady is an American hero, and hundreds of people owe their lives to his heroic actions. But selflessness and sacrifice do not require heroic acts. They just require purpose and a desire to be a blessing to others. Like I mentioned, from my perspective, I didn't do anything that would be classified as extraordinary during my naval career. I just did my job. I was stationed with a helicopter squadron, spent months at sea aboard the USS Enterprise, and I just kept my head down and did my work. Now, one of the things I prided myself on, and I tried to do, was always being the person that other people were happy to see. When I walked into a room, I wanted other people to be glad that I was there. So how does that happen? It's not organic. It's about a willingness to put the needs of others above yourself and strive to be confident in all you do. Not perfect, as my wife would surely attest, not extraordinary, but willing to sacrifice. Now, each one of us has the opportunity to be what I like to call ordinarily extraordinary. So what does that mean? Any guesses? Be yourself. I love that. That's awesome. For me, it just means looking at what might be considered ordinary actions, like being polite, showing up on time, picking up garbage when you see it, and just being extraordinary at those things, making it our purpose to be great at those things, small or big, whatever we choose. And when I served, I tried to be good at helping. I tried to be indispensable, and I think we all have that opportunity. Now, as students, you might not face the same challenges as someone like General Brady or someone who served on active duty or in combat, but you do make sacrifices of your own. You sacrifice time and effort to pursue your education, participate in extracurricular activities like sports or the orchestra, and to work towards your goals. Every achievement, regardless of how big or small, comes with its own sacrifices. Whether that's time spent studying instead of hanging out with friends so you can ace that math quiz, or the determination to choose to go to practice rather than go on that family vacation. Embrace those sacrifices that you make and celebrate them. They matter, and they shape who you are and who you are going to be. And they truly are extraordinary. Now, speaking of achievement through sacrifice, I want to spend a little time talking about Sergeant First Class Leanne Hester. Sergeant First Class Hester is the first woman to receive the Silver Star for direct combat in action, or for direct action in combat. In March of 2005, while serving in Iraq, Hester and her team were ambushed by insurgents in a convoy along a stretch of road on the outskirts of Baghdad. Demonstrating extraordinary courage under fire, she led a counterattack, engaging enemy forces with a grenade launcher and rifle, and despite the overwhelming fire from the insurgents, Hester and her team fought back, securing the area and rescued wounded soldiers. Her leadership and valor under fire were pivotal in repelling the ambush, and her actions directly contributed to saving lives. Her bravery shattered gender expectations and highlighted the evolving role of women in combat, cementing her as a trailblazer in military history. So courage under fire, sacrifice, and selflessness. Again, Sergeant First Class, like General Brady, was just an ordinary person who did an extraordinary thing. She grew up in a small town in Kentucky, had a dad and uncle who served in the Army, and was just drawn to the idea of service at a young age. In Iraq, she selflessly put the needs of others above her own, served as a protector, and saved lives. So what is selflessness? Selflessness is the quality of putting the needs, well-being, or interests of others ahead of your own. It involves acting with a genuine concern for others, often at personal cost or sacrifice, without expecting anything in return. A selfless person demonstrates compassion, generosity, and a willingness to help others, even if it means giving up their own time, resources, or comfort. Do any of you have people like that in your lives who exhibit those traits? If all of you should be nodding if you have a mother, a grandmother, or a sister, because they tend to. I can tell you, when I think about selflessness, I think about my mom and my wife. All of you have those people in your life. I'm sure you have teachers and staff here at Roosevelt High School that embody those characteristics. And I'm certain that many of you in this room are selfless as well. As you can imagine, there's a very diverse group of people who choose to join the military, serve their country, and eventually become veterans. Many of us, like me, have pretty uneventful service. Now, I did earn a Naval ROTC scholarship at the University of Washington, go Huskies, and I'm proud of that. I saw some amazing things, had an opportunity to do some remarkable things, met some remarkable people, many of whom I'm still in contact with to this day. And I do believe that many people who serve, and the majority of our veterans population, do embody selflessness. They made a commitment to serve their country and protect the freedom of others, often at great personal sacrifice. And I do need to point out that many veterans have endured physical and emotional challenges, facing life-threatening danger, hardship, separation from loved ones, all for the greater good of their nation and fellow citizens. And many carry the emotional scars and physical scars from their service to this day, and I saw that every day when I was working at the VA. Their willingness to put themselves in harm's way, sometimes at the cost of their own well-being, is a profound example of selflessness. The selflessness exhibited by veterans is not just in their acts of valor during combat or their service on active duty, but in the quiet, everyday choices they make to support and care for others, demonstrating a deep sense of duty, honor, and sacrifice that defines their legacy. If you get a chance, thank them for their service and reflect on the sacrifices that so many men and women have made to keep our nation free and prosperous. Sacrifice and selflessness are qualities that can be found in many aspects of life, often in ways that feel ordinarily extraordinary. Whether it's a parent working long hours to ensure their kids have the opportunities they never had, or a neighbor quietly offering up help to those in need, acts of selflessness are often woven into the fabric of everyday life. These individuals don't seek recognition for their sacrifices. Instead, they demonstrate a profound commitment to the well-being of others, often at the expense of their own comforts and desires, as I mentioned earlier. Now, while their actions may seem simple or routine, they carry extraordinary weight, leaving lasting impact on the lives of everyone they touch. In this way, selflessness and sacrifice are not just heroic in the grand moments, but are reflected in the quiet, consistent choices that shape a better, more compassionate world. In closing, here's what I'd ask you. First, thank a veteran or active duty service member for their service. It matters that they are seen. Second, look for opportunities to be ordinarily extraordinary. Make small sacrifices like picking up trash around the school when you see it, or introducing yourself to someone who just looks like they could use a friend. And finally, strive to be the person that other people are glad to see. All of us can be heroes in our efforts to make our school, our community, and our country a place that all of us are glad to call home. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Casillo. Now we're here to hear one more final piece from the Roosevelt Symphony Orchestra.
Just a few quick words about the piece of music, written by one of our most famous American composers, Aaron Copland, who lived from 1900 to 1990. The name of this piece that we're going to play for you is A Fanfare for a Common Man. fanfare for the common man. It was written in 1922. There was a war effort with the musicians in this country, and there was a competition to have a composer write a fanfare to celebrate our armed service members. And Copeland was one of the winners. And just read you something really quick. Its title is as original as its music. A comparison with the nine other fanfares selected for publication underline this originality. Other titles that Copeland had considered were Fanfare for the Spirit of Democracy, Fanfare for Four Freedoms, which was a reference to Roosevelt's 1941 State of the Union address that called for freedom of speech, of religion, from want, and from fear. And the Fanfare for Rebirth of Leipzig, which was a Czech town that had been destroyed by the Nazis in 1942. He decided upon this title because Copeland said, a fanfare for the common man. It was the common man, after all, who was doing all the dirty work in the war and the army. He was the one that deserved a fanfare.
Thank you, orchestra. We all hope this resonated with you. You're all dismissed. Go back to your second period. Thank you.